Hey guys, tonight we'd slipping barefoot across the cool stone floor of a 14th century Ethiopian palace. Your ankles tinkle softly with bronze bangles, and the air is heavy with the scent of myrrh smoke. And last night, Janrain roosters are crowing somewhere in the distance, but they sound far below you, because you're high in the mountains. The royal palace is not just a homeit, a dear fortress in the sky, and you, tonight, are the queen Khan. So before you get comfy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. Human, let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day starts before the sun, which feels unfair. But here we are in this chilly hour. A servant named Ubit is already kneeling by your bed with warm water and a tiny carved bowl of ba. This isn't at breakfast. This is hair time. She dips her fingers in the butter, fragrant and slightly nutty, and begins smoothing it through your tightly braided hair. It is part styling, part ritual, part, there to be honest, social survey. She watching your moo, she listening to what you say in your sleep, she going to tell some, probably everyone. The palace is carved into the rock like it grew here. Windows are slit ceilings, loo everything a. You surrounded by thick incense and thicker expects. Your title is etiquette, but no one calls you that to your face. Your mother. You're occasionally my moon sister of divine frost, which sounds like a great album title. If a little much before coffee, you sit while three other attendants, Malcolm Sega and the always suspicious Janae, bring you linens, stretch your arms, help you into layers of muslin, cotton, and a wrap dyed deep red with crushed roots. Red means rawly red, also means, please don't interrupt me while I'm resembling an empire before noon. They know bet well. Janae pretends she doesn't. She the kind who offers you choice earrings, which somehow just happen to be your least flattering pair. Once dressed, you step into a pair of leather sandals, so worn they remember the last queen and feet. They creak a lit, but honestly that in kind of comfort you. Descend into the hallway where the air tastes of stone and juniper. A priest passes by and bows so low you hear his knees complain. He carrying a scroll. You pretend not to notice it. Upside down, the courtyard and mosaic tiles are still wet from a night drizzle. Birds flit from one fig tree to another. Somewhere a servant is being shouted at for burning the porridge. Again you walk through it all with the same expression. Queens have always preferred a face that says, I might be dreaming of stabbing you with this hairpin, but you'll never know you don't eat yet. That comes after the public walk. This is where you glide, yes, glide, along the outer corridor where your presence alone is the speed. You're not allowed to appear tired or sweaty or visibly worried about the empire. Ard grain reserves just serene, like your only concern is whether the lilies are blooming too early this year. At the far end of the corridor, a palace dogoon of those wiry little ankle biters that thinks it to the lion, barks at your shadow and then promptly slips on a step you keep war. Dignity demands it, but inside, yes, you are lassing mildly. Internally you arrive at the morning bench. It is exactly what it sounds like. You sit there for precisely as long as tradition demands, which is roughly the time it takes to boil an egg and recite a psalm. You do 90 instead. You watch the horizon, you count mountain peace. You quietly wonder if there anyone left who remembers your favourite car. Ism blue, by the way, not royal blue, sky blue, but you hadn't worn it in years. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian queens had personal taste, or if they were simply extensions of state pageantry. You could tell them, but they would believe you any. Finally the signal comes, 2 bells and one very dramatic bow from the steward. With the golden flies, what breakfast is ready. Your knees pop again, just slidey, wabbit, here's it. She looks alarmed, like maybe your bones have betrayed the king. You smile faintly, you hope it unsettles her. As you glide toward the inner chambers you hear a page muttering your titles under his breath. They go on for a while. Theri N, protector of the 13th Thrum, voice of the moonstone, and something new today, feathered shield of morning light. You make a note to ask later if that was added by committee, or is someone just trying to get a promo. You step into the anteroom of the breakfast hall, and pause, not for effect, just to breathe. The room smells of spice and fresh bread, and a tiny bit of resent. There are 6 women already seated. Your courtier, your shadans, your crets, your friends, in the very royal sense. A Bolne hadn't tried to poison me yet this year. You take your seat, the chair creaks, the silence doesn't. Bearing injera rolled like scrolls, tiny heaps of bare dusted lentils, and a bowl of something that might be sweet or medicinal. It are hard to tell. then you're not quite brave enough to ask. Not in front of Lady Ianchu, who already watching you, like a hawk who read too much Poe. They talk, you nod. You sip from a wooden cup carved with stars. Your mind drifts, just a little, to mother the scent of morning rain, and to the cool tiles beneath your feet before the palace woke up it. It's the only time you feel like you're not performing. You finish breakfast with digging, not too quickly, not too slow, just enough to say, "Pork fat, I am present, but I am not predictable." You rise, your court follows like well-dressed shatters, and as you move toward your private chapel, the sun finally climbs over the eastern pea gold pours through the Horver. You walk through it like you were born in that lie. The chapel is quiet, but not empty. 2 priests are already inside, whispering their way through a litany that feels as old as the mountain itself. You step through the doorway and their voices drop, not out of reverence necessarily, but because no one wants to guess wrong about how a queen is feeling before Lud. The chapel isn't large. It is carved straight into the stone, the walls still rough in places where tools gave up or time smoothed things over. There are no stained glass here, instead, slits in the rock, let in shafts of gold light that catch the incense smoke midair, turning everything into a slow, holy shin. You kneel. Or rather, you do a modified kneel, part reverence, part avoiding that pin in your skirt. Your knees aren't what they used to be, neither is your pace. You pray, but not always with words. Some mornings it is just a prayers, other times it a list of nays, of worries, put, of things you wish you could change, but probably 1-2 kneels beside you. Cider. Her breath smells faintly of cumin. She always chews seeds to calm her nerves before entering the chai. You're flattered honestly, even the help prays harder when you're involved today prayer is ceremony. The queenie presence here is required twice a week, and no, you don't get religious exemptions just because you had a late night negotiating border grain taxes with a countess who thinks figs are cur. You light a taper and place it into the iron candelabra shaped like a lion may. The flame flusses. You resist the urge to whisper something sarcastic. The last time you did, the priest gave a sermon the next day that suspiciously emphasized, "But here, women who do not respect the silence of sacred space." You suspect he writes those sermons with you in mind. You're not wrong. When the prayers finish, the priest approaches with a scroll. This is part of the dance. He reads a verse in K's old language, and you nod like it be both meaningful and you heard this one before. It the bit about Deborah and Barak, about women who lead armies and sing songs under tree. It a flattering, in a not so subtle way. You wonder what he wants. You always do. You leave the chapel as the sun is rising, higher, warming the black stone floor just enough to make your feet itch inside your sam. You're due in the Chamber of Scrolls next, not because you love paperwork, Kuhn does, but because ruling, it turns out, involves more ink than intrigue. The chamber is cool and dry and smells like wax, dust and amber. You sit at a long wooden desk with a wobbly leg, and 3 scribes immediately approach like they've been waiting to pound. They carry scrolls, tablets, and that one very cursed set of trade agreements from the Northern Highlands that no one wants to sign but everyone pretends to care about. You listen, you nod, you correct them because yes, you remember the silver tax from 4 seasons ago, and no, you don't need them to remind you what you already lived through. You sign your name on 2 scrolls, mark a third with a little copper stamp, and gently slide the 4th one off the desk and under your sleeve to pour consider lead. You return it if any are not. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian queens had direct legislative authority or merely ceremonial role. You did learning me just lay. With morning means tea, you escape the scroll chamber with the grace of someone who knows exactly how long she can fake a sudden migraine. You settle into the sunroom, but your relatively new addition to the pal, glass from rail tiles, from hurrah furniture from a merchant who kept calling you Mother of the Sun, until you bought his entire inventory just to shut him up. You seat, you see the tea is spike, sweet. You close your eyes and let the warmth travel down your throat, like a small polite sigh. This is your one moment alone. Except it isn't, because the room in, not in the corner like a statue pretending to have thoughts. She learning. Mock courtly observing, which apparently means watching. You drink tea without blings, watching you drink tea without bling. P glance at her, she does flin, you almost respect it. You ask her name, she whispers, Eden Box. You ask if she read anything lay. You make a mental note maybe. She'd grow up to be you saw Tara Graham. Same thing. Read later. You meet with the royal herbalin. She arrives in a swirl of mint and mystery, her robes covered in pouches, her fingers stained with something that smells like crushed basil. And regret, she lays out samples on the table. One for sleep, one for headaches, and one she says is for inspire, which you strongly suspect is code for hallucinine. You choose sleep or V. You ask her about Miri Yakov. Oh, wait, wrong Senja. You ask her about Lady Amlaka Rash. The herbalist clicks her tongue, offers a paste, and then casually mentions that Butu, too much fig wine, may cause the body to weep from the elbows. You don't question it mostly, because that sounds like something Lady Amlak would absolutely do. The afternoon sun is blinding now. You move to the shaded court. Birds are nesting in the fig tree again. The dog is bark. You consider naming it, then decide not to. You don't need one more living thing to disappoint you. A diplomat arrives late of courtier. Sweetie, of course he bows too deeply and speaks too loud. He wants to renegotiate aboard a tree. You let the silence stretch until even the dog stops bark. Then you smile and you say, Edie, we can discuss it when the moon rises. He doesn't know what that means, Natcher the point. You leave him blinking in the courtyard. While you ascend to your personal chain, the steps are steep, the air thinner. But the view, oh the view, worth it. The mountains roll out like waves, clouds clinging to the ridges, like old stories refusing to die. You stand there, alone fine show, for a minute. You don't feel like a queen, you feel like a girl again, hiding from her tutors, eating dried apricots behind the spice shelves. You sign, and somewhere far below, a bell chime, time for the afternoon prasar. A game because no one said ruling would be restful. The bell echoes through the stone corridors, bouncing off pillars and past tapestries, sounding less like an invitation and more like a dare time. For the preset again, you don't groan out loud. But the sigh you let slip is heavy enough to flatten the small footstool processions, are not your fay. They are hosted, they are long, and they are, despite all the shimmering parasols and silver-threaded fans, terribly repetitive. You know how many steps there are between the upper chamber and the outer gaze. You know which tile creaks. You know which courtier will try to walk beside you, as if that's an accident, and not a tactical positioning play in the ongoing game of burn who can be seen with the queen without getting on her nerves. Spoiter, none of them. You begin the descent. 4 guards flank you, 2 ahead, 2 behind. They are tall, stone-faced men who take their job extremely seriously and have not once in all these years laughed at your jokes, not even the good ones. You think about dismissing them just to see if they do flind, but then you remember the spear incident. You didn't dismiss them. Your robe today is silk, dyed with indigo and pomegranate. It rustles when you walk, which is supposed to be intimidating, but mostly just reminds you of your auntie pet parrot. The outer courtyard is full nobles, priests, scribes. A French envoy who keeps pretending not to understand Amharic, so he does not have to answer questions directly. You make a note to assign him a translator who does not like him, preferably someone who coughs loudly when he speaks. You take your place at the front of the line. Everyone arranges themselves behind you, not because they're polite, but because no one wants to look over eager by standing too close, or disrespectful by standing too far. Court etiquette is basically one long, slow-motion panic attack. In embroidery, the procession begins. You move slowly, gracefully, like you're wading through honey and everyone else is trying to keep up without looking sweaty. Drums beat softly, then louding, then they fade again, replaced by the high whistle of a flute and the low drone of a horn. Carved from a rammer horn, the sounds wash over you, hypnotic, repetitive, calming in that slightly annoying way. Children throw flower petal. A few of them aim for your feet with the precision of future gen. You don't react to. Also, you've been hit harder by flying figs. At the end of the path is a raised platform under a woven canopy. You mount the stairs with the ease of someone who has done this 1,000 times and has the thigh strength to prove it. Your throne is carved from sandalwood, inlaid with ivory, and only slightly less comfortable than a crate of melons. You sit, straight back, chin high, like your mother taught you, though your mother also said you should never trust a man who wears more jewelry than you, which has also proven useful. The crowd cards a poet, steps forward, not the one you lie. This one has a tendency to go on and on about. The queen in eyes like twin moons, and ochre hair like black rivers of just. You don't roll your eyes, you want to, but the people love this part. They nod, they sigh, they whisper, paw. Yes, yes, like hair revealing the secret to eternal figs. Let them have it. This is the public part of your reign. Ceremony dignity, even if you are thinking about the goat stew you did finish at lunch after the poem. And yes, it finally ends. A small girl is led for. She may be Sebi, maybe 6.5, she clutching a bundle wrapped in fabric, holding it with the seriousness of a priest cradling scripture. She the weaver-in daughter, chosen to present the seasonal cloth to the crown. This happens every spring. You lean forward slightly. As she approaches, her eyes wide, her steps wobbly, she knees holds up the bun. You take it, unwrap it inside. A swatch of sky-coloured linen, embroidered with birds in flight. You smile. Genuine, because this is the best part of the day, not because it's ceremony ball, but because it is ski, it's way, but because it a child pride made visa. You hold the cloth up, so the crowd can seize a murmur approval, and you bend just slightly, just enough to tell the girl, you did well. She beams, runs off, forgetting to bow. Good, let her leave like a cont. The rest of the day winds down in a blur of courtesies, and you return inside, peel off layers of formal wear like an onion that no longer wants to impress any you. You splash water on your face cold. His name is Gabi. He older than most mountains and twice as stubborn. He carries his ledgers like a personal insults, and he refers to every potential uprising as payo, a mild inconvenience, unless the goats are involved. You like him today. He brings reports from the western frontier there, talk of smugglers or possibly tax evasion. Or possibly just an unusually aggressive merchant with 7 cousins and a broken cart. Hard to tell. He updates you with the weary air of someone who fought real battles and now spends his time chasing paperwork that smells faintly of goat cheese. You ask questions, he answers them. You argue briefly over how many guards to send. You win because you're queen, more so because you bribed his granddaughter with candied dates last week. And he has not forgotten. Evening falls quickly here. The light shifts from gold to blue to something in between. You retreat to your private room. It smells of cedar and sandalwood, and a little bit like old ing. You pour wine sweet, not too strong. You kick off your shoes. Literally, they land near the wall with a soft thud that no one will dare many. You look out the wingle stars, again same ones, every night, but somehow never bore. You see, tame brie, you do you seed, remaded toro. You'd do it again, not because you must, but because you can. And they're in power in that, even if your throne squeaks when you sit down, the stars blink overhead like gossiping witnesses, too far away to help but close enough to judge. The colour of cotton ones dyed pale blue. The colour of calm the merchant had promised, though you're not entirely convinced fabric can change your mood. You're brushing your hair, 100 strokes, like your nursemaid used to count aloud, when you were still small enough to believe doing things a certain way would keep the world from cracking open. Your mirror is a bronze disc, polished to near reflection, and though the face staring back is familiar, the eyes feel like someone else in tonight. Not sad, exact, just full, with too much that does no fit anywhere out. The knock at the door is quiet, 3 short ras. The signal for, it not urgent but you want to hear this. You set the brush down and call, enter, eco woobit agay. Of course. She bows too low as usual, and hands you a scroll sealed in wax shaped like a goaten hoof. You raise an eye pain. Only one man in the kingdom uses that see your unk, which means this could either be political flattery disguised as poetry, or yet another complaint about the border reeds being cut incorrectly by farmers who one clearly have no respect for ancestral irrigation traditions. You break the sea. It is the second one, of course. You sigh and read it N.A. Your uncle's grievances are never urgent, but they always oddly satisfying, like watching someone argue passionately about the shape of Clyde. Tonight's letter includes a hand-drawn diagram of a water wheel, 4 uses of the phrase. You chuckle. Boobit waits for instruct. You tell her to draft a polite but entirely non-committal reply, and to send him a jar of honey with it. He likes honey, and flattery disguised as sweetness is still flatty. What nods and lees. You sit back down. A evening audience. Yes, they're in an evening orbis because being queen isn't a 9-to-5 job. Whenever someone decides they can solve their own problem job, you throw on a fresh robe, lighter, simpler, dyed with crushed marigold petals, and head down to the small hall. This is the informal space, no throne, just cushions, low tays, a giant carved lion head that glares down from the wall like it judging your aposy. There are already 3 people way first. An old woman from the eastern district who claims her neighbour's chickens are possessed by spirits, and have begun stealing law. You listen, you nostly, you ask what the chickens of stow, she says, bore mostly under things. You do not laugh mostly, you thank her, and promise to send some you will, but probably not until next week. Second, a merchant whose son has been arrested for drawing rude pictures on public bench. You raise an eyebrow. He says it was artistic expression. You ask if the benches were in Prussian. He says, well, they are certainly more noticeable now. You suppress a smile. You order the son released, with the caveat that he clean every bench himself twice with vinegar. Third, a palace cook who wants permission to try a new dish involving fermented lentils, roasted garlic, and a kind of fish no one can quite identify. You grant it not because it sounds delicious, but because you like a little risk with your supper. Audience conclude you finally alone again. Not really alone again. You walk to the terrace with ear, but close enough cool to walk to the terrace barefoot now. A dog barking like it got something to prove. You watch the flicker of torches tracing the palace walls, and the slow swirl of smoke from a distant fire pit. It's peace in a beaten, trusted kind of way, and then, unexpectedly, you think of your Mai, how she used to hum when she walked, how her hands always smelled like lemon leaves and almond oil, how she once told you, "Some power is not a throne, my love teen what you do when no one watching." You didn't understand then, you do now, because these moments when no one applauds, when no one bows, this is still Rumen, still choosing, still shaping the world one breath, one decree, one stubborn refusal at a time. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian queens wielded their influence primarily through ceremony or through quiet streku. You say, both because sometimes power wears Jews, and sometimes it wears exor. Tonight, it wears you exor, and you wear it whem, a bowl of tamarind paste on the tay. You sis again, and finally, you ride just a little. Not speeds, not decrease. To screeno, not decrease scrawled in uneven lines on the back of an old account leo. You write about the girl with the embroidered clod, about the taste of mint in your tea, about the chicken thie, and how strange it is, being both queen and woman, and tired and alive, falls at once. You close the door, slip it under your cuz, blow out the can. The room goes dark, but not unfrain, and for a moment, just one soft flickering moment, you don't feel watched or weighed or measured. You just feel here you lie back. The sheets are crisp too, their air a breeze through the wind. You let your eyes claps, and tomorrow you begin again. Of course, but tonight you're in, and the kingdom, its fix book, sleeps with you. Morning doesn't come with trumpets, it comes with a breeze that smells faintly of roasted grains, and someone over-boiled lentils. Sneaking through the window cracks before your eyelids even fly, you stretch under the linen sheets, the fabric cool where your legs find new corn. Your back makes that familiar little crack. Yes, that one, and you smile into the pillow because somehow it is comforting. A reminder that this body, while queenly, is also deeply hewn before your feet touch the floor. Someone already at the door, of course. You call out groggily, and Wubit enters with a silver tray, and the kind of expression that means, today going to be in drinks. The tray holds injera, goat cheese, a boiled egg, and a tiny clay cup of coffee, so dark it reflects your eyebrows back at you. No fruit today. You raise an eyebrow. Wubet shrug. Fruit shipment delay. She says bandits or bureaucracy. She pauses. Both. Ifeka. You dress slowly this morn. There ain't no rush. Just a steady march of things that need do you. You choose the ivory-coloured shawl today, the one with gold thread hand-woven by the blind artisans from the highland. It is slightly frayed at the edge, but you like that. It reminds you that beauty doesn't always mean perfection. Tvubit helps braid your hair. Tight rows that pull gently at your tem. It hurts a lit that. How you know it a whole today is for Betes long one, with words like hereditary grain, rights and open astral border disputes, but technically cousins, so it's uncomplicated. You sit beneath the arch of the audience hall, one of the smaller ones where the echo doesn't swallow the softer vores. The ceiling is painted with saints, their eyes follow you. They always do. The first petitioner is a war. Older, via, v. She speaks slowly, carefully, as if her words are seeds being planted in your hands. Her husband, she says, passed last Siva. Her son has joined the Arn. She is alone to the Arn, and her neighbour is trying to take her fees. You nod, you ask questions. You write her name down not because you forget, but because writing things down makes people feel prophetic powers, and should be allowed to graze wherever it pleases. You raise both eyebrows for this one. He's here. You ask what the goat is predi. He says, rain and heartbreak. You let him keep the go, but restrict its range to his own feed because power and pity must occasionally hold hands. As the petitions pile up, your hand cramps from wine. You switch to your list. You sip. More coffee, someone brings dried figs. You accept one, mostly to delay a particularly tedious debate about whether a riverbed, dry for 10 years, still counts as communal bathing space. Historians still argue whether 14th century Ethiopian water law pineapized accessibility or lineage. You think, probably naively, you think, it was about controndle eventually. The petitions, people bow, shuffle out your scribes, collect the pace in you escape to the guard, it a early afternoon, now the sun is high. The air smells like myrrh and dust and the strange sweetness of overripe lemon. You find the old bench under the hibiscus tree. Just 3 tiny letters, now almost hidden by more. It's your strange, carving your own name into a place that already belongs to you. But that's the trick of power, you keep proving you exist, over and over. The birds allowed to do, not Malobi. Parrot squawks something that might be a curse or might be someone name. You squint at it. It squints back mutual respect, and then, as you lean back and close your eyes, thinking, perhaps you get to full 5 minutes alone, someone clears their throat. Of course, you open one eye, it is Udu, captain of the palace guard, tall, smells like iron and layer. Always seems mildly confused by the concept of lyily confused, by the concept of Lizai, he say, from the coast. You sighed, is she official? Because healers don't usually announce themselves, and certainly not to queeze. You stand stretch again, your knees crack once more. This time in protest you follow Zudu through the corridors, your sandals clicking against the cool stone. She's older, maybe Sadie 40, maybe 100. She wrapped in sea-coloured fabric, hair in tight coils like spring bud. She holds no staff, no scroll, no sign of rank, just a satchel that smells faintly of eucalyptus and air. You ask her name? She says, Badu. Mina. Mackay. She says, Bo'ina. Aman. You ask why. She here. She says, Boy, you been having dreams. Pork fat. Your eyes flick to Ubid, to Zudu, back to me, you say, but everyone dreams. She smiles, not like this. You do not ask how she knows that would give her the pause. You lead her to the inner chamber. Do one with the lion tapestry and the velvet floor mass. You sit, she sits, no one else, ender. She begins, and she speaks in that strange, slow rhythm that makes your heartbeat adjust itself just to Liz. She tells you store about other Quinin, a girl who ruled a salt island with no fresh water and drank her tears to survive. A woman who convinced an invading army to turn around by pretending to be a goat. A child who refused to wear shoes for so long that the earth itself bent to her command. These are not stories. You've heard these are not stories people write down. These are stories passed like necklaces between wean, worn and reworn, not for beauty, for betraying years. She asks nothing of you. She gives you no instruct. She just leave you he sit for a long time after that, breathing in the eucalyptus, pork fat, about everything that been asked of you and everything you still had not asked for you, so the candlelight flickers evening again to rye, or bay. The pen runs dry. Halfway through the story of the barefoot queen you frown at the page, give the reed pen a gentle shake, and sigh when it only gives you a pale reluctant smud. Of course you reach for a new ink pot, only to discover it's missing. Frat, Rubit has taken it, probably for copying palace rosters, and you're left staring at your unfinished words. The memory of that salt island slipping quietly out the back of your mind like a guest who doesn't wish to be note. You push the page away enough. Writing for one day, the room is dim and warm, shadows pooling around the carved wooden beams like cats curled up for a nap. The sky through the window has softened to that watercolor blue that only exists for about 10 minutes in the late afternoon, where everything outside looks like a meme, and you think, quite seriously, about not getting up, about sinking into that old embroidered chair and letting the sunlight climb down your body like a blank. But you can. Today is the monthly inspection of the palace storage cellars. An event only slightly more thrilling than watching millet furnace. You slip on a wrap. Plain brown linen with the faint scent of sea. No crown, no June, just you, and the faint creak of your sandals against the stone steps as you descend. The cellars are cooler than expect, they always are. Stone-arched corridors stretch ahead, lined with jars, baskets, crates, and the occasional sleeping cat that doesn't belong to anyone in particular. The air smells like sesame oil, and damp cloth bear hanu, The palace steward is already there. He bows low, always the picture of nervous efficiency. Berhanu carries a clipboard carved from horn and seems permanently startled. You walk together, inspecting stocks of dried lentils, sacks of barley, and a particularly questionable jar labelled emergency olives. You ask how long they've been here, Berhanu. 3 reign, he says. You recommend they be reassigned to diplomatic giz, preferably to someone you don't like. He chuckles, just barely, and you feel a small flicker of triumph. Making Berhanu laugh is harder than organising a royal wedding during locust seas halfway through. A young page bursts in his eyes. Why? His words tangled in ers. Nor, he gasps. You raise an eye. Of what sort? A foreign visitor from the north. You wait, he adds. She very loud. You excuse yourself and follow the page through the maze of palace halls, your wrap fluttering behind you like a banner that says, "This had better be worth it." When you arrive at the greeting chamber, the sound hits you furs. Someone is singing, not a hymn, not court muley, a song with a beat, a bounce. Something sailors might chant while hoisting cargo up riverbank inside. A woman is perched on the edge of the receiving couch, waving her arms like she conducting an invisible orca. She stops when she sees you, stands, smiles wide, and bows with the kind of dramatic flourish that says, "I want you to remember this forever." Her name, she announces, is Adonet. She is a mernin, a train, a pole, a beforen, a little of everything, depending on the port. She offers you a carved box of sandalwood and candied orange peas. Says, "It a piece ofing." You ask if there been a war. She laughs. Says, "Not yet." You find yourself smiling in spite of yourself. Adonet is exhausting in the way only truly charming people can be. She speaks of her travels, the narrow mountain passes of the Samian highlands, the trading markets of Nubia, the rumours of silk caravans heading even farther east. She gestures like her stories are birds she's setting free. She also tells you things no one else dares, that your ambassadors wear too much cologne, that your wheat bread is too dry, that your court musicians need more tambourine. You laugh more than you expect, not because the jokes are all funny, because she'd irreverent in a way that makes you feel briefly weightless. She like a gust of wind that forgets to ask permission before entry. Eventually, she quiets, her eyes settle on you with sudden softening, and she says, "Do you ever leave?" You don't answer right away, because yes and no, because there was a time when you wore a shawl low and called yourself Ma and bought roasted corn from street vendors who asked no questions. And there was a time when a goat herder tried to teach you how to whistle with your fingers, and you nearly lost your voice trying. And there was a time when you danced, really danced. The back of a weaving house to a drumbeat played on a water jug, but not lays, not in months, not since things got. Hey, you tell her. Not often. She nods, as if you confirmed a truth she already knew. Then she leans forward, whispers, "You should," and just like that. She leaves no bow, no formal gut, just a swirl of indigo cloth and sandalwood air, and sigh. You sit alone for a while after that, her words still humming in your bones like a tuning fork. You return to your room. Wibbit says nothing, but raises one eyebrow like a punctuation mark. Bun. She was interesting. Ribbit grunts in agree. You soak your feet, light another can, and reach for your note. You write. Her voice sounded like tambourines dipped in sun, and beneath that, what would it feel like to be no one? That night, you dream of walking alone through a foreign mark. You are not queen, not mother, not door, not store, just a woman with pockets full of dried figs and hands stained with turmeric. And for once, no one looks twice when you wake. The dream clings like silk. You hold it for as long as you can before the day claims you again, because the throne always calls. But sometimes, just sometimes, you let it wait. The throne doesn't like to be ignored for long. By sunrise it reasserts itself, with the stubbornness of a child who gone too long without being known. A knock at the door, too polite to be urgent, too early to be friend. You wipe sleep from your eyes, wrap yourself in a soft cotton shawl and an it. She already dressed, already awake, already balancing a tray with porridge, a letter, and that faint look of someone who's about to deliver news. You one enjoy. You nod. She ends, sets the tray down, tells you quite simply, "The council wants to meet today." You exhale. Of course they do. You read the letter, it in florid in the way only official documents can be, 3 different salutations, 3 different spellings of your title, and a closing line that includes both "coup to most respect" and "biddy I concern." That combination never means anything good. You read qui dreth. and make your way to the hall where decisions go to become compromises. The council chamber is shaped like a drum circuit, high ceiling echoed the kind of room where even a sneeze sounds like prof. The elders are seated already, 10 of them in various shades of fatigue, skepticism, and quiet Calton. You know them all. You know, who needs flattery, who likes facts, who waits until everyone else speaks before pretending their opinion was a rizzle. Today they gathered to discuss land, more precisely, the land surrounding the salt caravan routes. There are the dispute 2 provinces claiming overlapping rights. Quietly they speak over each other like ways. Tax records are psych. Maps are unfurled. Someone brings out a carved sick that supposedly marks the border, except it looks suspiciously like a walking key. You let them talk. You stir your tea. Then, after a full hour of passive aggression disguised as governance, you speak just a few words. Enough to cut the room like a well-sharpened sickle. You ask, but who profits most from the confusion? Silent, then chafets most from the confusion. Kiwason, then Shivan, then Muttery. You weigh because you know the answer. Or Ray. It not the Fars, not the salt tradents, impose new tariffs or hold land until the matter is resolved. You suggest an orty, a rotation of stewards, a third-party mediator from a distant province. Someone with no stake, no cousins, no hidden deaths. The room shifts again, someone coughs, someone nods. Burhanu, bless him, writes furiously in the cording. Eventually the motion is accepted, grudgingly. No one claps, no one. Thanks you, but that's it again. If they silent, you won. You return to your chambers, where Yvette already has water ready for your hand. You ask if any messengers have come. She hesitates, then says, Wombo. You weigh. She hands you a scrap of cloth, just a pressed lavender flower inside you. You smile, tuck it into the drawer beside the other. You spend the afternoon walking the gar, not for beauty, but to thin the air smells like crushed thyme, and the faint iron of approaching ray. You pass the fish pond, where the emperor's youngest son once tried to baptize a turtle. You pass the fig tree you planted 5 years ago, now thick with shadow and small green fruit, and you think, deeply, about Pal, not the shiny kind with crowns and serrae, the quiet kind, the kind that whispers instead of shout, the kind that lets you plant fig trees and audit corrupt officials in the same breath. Her voice, her quest, would you ever leave? Could you, if everything vanished tomorrow? Heave the palace crumbled, the titles dissolved, the guards wandered off into the mists. Who would you be? The thought is oddly comfort, because for all your trappings you remember how to walk barefoot, how to barter for saffron, how to barter for saffron. You remember? And that means you're not trapped. Not entirely. The day ends with a sunset that looks like spilled clay and key. You sit by the window, fingers brushing the lavender flower like it did a string to another lie. Wobbit enters, holding something behind her back. You raise an eyebrow. She reveals a sweet bun. Says, "But from the kitchen, boy." You blink. Which kitchen, boy? She shrum all. You smile. Break the bun in half. Offer her a piece for once. She extends your man new eaten companionable size, and the candle flickers like it knows a secret you haven't told. Yet later that night, you write again. Your ink pot is full. Your pen ray you write. Leadership is knowing when to speak, and when to write. Then underline embroidered, when to eat the bun. Even if you're not hungry, you sleep better than you. The night presses soft against your shutters. You dream of fig trees, of balancing acts, of ruling not from a throne, but from a garden bench, with dirt under your fingernails and sun on your face. The world feels gentle in your dream. Not sin, just kind you carry, that kindness into morn, and it clings like dew to your shown. Morning smells, like coffee and wet stone. The rain came just before dawn, soft and shy, the kind of drizzle that blesses the air without fully committing to a storm. You stretch slowly, every bone offers comatose. You're not old, not by the standards of court anyway. But leadership has a way of aging the soft parts first. The parts that used to giggle freely, dance barefoot in the mud, sleep in past braid. You dress in cotton today, not sick cotton today, not silk, practical rain friend. She likes when you dress sensibly, even though she herself is currently wearing embroidered slippers. You to be terrified to sneeze near you step outside. The palace smells like earth, and yesterday, then polits it. Today will be different, not Betty, just different. You're scheduled to visit a monastery high up, carved into a cliffside like a sea key. It houses some of the kingdom of Modis texts, which is a polite way of saying they upset and want to scold someone in authority. Your horse is rare, not your usual white mare, but a chestnut with a sullen disposition and a habit of trying to eat your sleeju. You mount any, the ride is long, 6 hours up narrow paths that flirt with ravines, through forests that smell of myrrh and quay. You pass villages, children way, some shout your name. Others just stare, as if trying to puzzle out what exactly a queen is supposed to look like at the base of the mountain. The real climb begin no more whore. Just your own 2 feet, and a sense of duty you didn't ask for but wear like a favourite chore. The monastery is cut into the rock at Sek, a marvel of architecture and sheer stubbornness. The monks greet you with deep bows and wide eyes. You suspect it is not every day a woman in rain-damp cotton climbs a mountain to visit them. They usher you in sad. It a cool dim, smells like vellum incense, and the ghosts of old eyes. The abbot is a thin man with sharp eyebrows. He offers tea you accept. Then he begin a slow, winding lecture about the state of moral decline. He cites Dynan, Heroi, Pline. He cites Dankline, Herol, eventually. You speak genty, you ask what they fear not dislike, not disapprove of, but fear the question quiets the room, even the incense seems to pause mid-air. After a moment he says, forgetting Trade, forgetting Versi, more scries, a partnership between palace and monastery to preserve, oral stores to copy, ancient texts before the pages, crumble into memory he relaxes, slightly the conversation shifts, turns to stories of queens pight, of one who ruled with an iron ring and a green parrot on her shoulder. Another who forbade shoes in her presence, not for holiness, but because she hated muddy floors. You laugh, they laugh, the room warms. You stay longer than planned, eat with them. Flat bread and lentils and honeyed figs. They gift you a tiny scroll case inside. A prayer written so small it looks like thread, for wisdom and strong ang. They say you tuck it into your sleeve as you prepare to leave. One monk, young freckled eyes like river stones, asks you soft, is it hard to be you? You consider and say, only when I forget, I'm still allowed to laugh. The descent is easier. Your chestnut horse is less sulky. The air is brighter at one point. You stop, remove your shoe, step into a puddle just to feel the cool brew bit. It stares at you like you've been possessed. The kitchen smells. The sky has clear. You reach the palace. The sky has clear. You eat alone. For one, a bowl in your lap, elbows on the tag, queenliness optum. Later, in your study you examine the scroll again. The tiny pray you trace the script with your thumb. You don't read it, not yet sometimes. It high enough just to hold something satied. You write in your journal. Bobby Wade want to preserve the past. I want to hold the future without crushing it. Then below that, also, monks are funnier than expect. You fall asleep quiet. Dream of scrolls that sing, of fakes that whisper, seats of shoes left neatly by doorways that no longer lead anywhere you have to be. The rains come harder the next day, a steady sheet of silver, drawn across the sky like the hem of a great soaking cur. It drums on the roof tiles in a rhythmic beats, seeps into corners where it die not wanted, and makes everything smell like soil and steam. You don't leave your core, no one expects you to. Even Wubit, dutiful, meticulous Wubit, declares this a day for indoor business and finds herself a patch of warm floor to embroider on the palace hushes. It happens sometimes during long rains as if the stones themselves need rest, but rest is tree for queens. It's an illusion with good You try. You sit by the window, watching rivulets twist down the glass. You cradle a cup of barley tea, but your mind wanders back to the monastery, forward to the grain levies, sideways to that one noble who insists on importing ostrich feathers from somewhere entirely too far away. You think of your body, of the way your spine curved during sleep, of the twinge in your hip that is new, uninvited and persit. You stretch win-win laugh under your breast, 40 and fable. You murmur no one here, which makes it better. Rainy days were different in your use. Then they were invité to mischief, to running barefoot and shrieking through puddles like demons made of lava, to sneaking hot bread from kitchen windows and pretending you'd have been reading all afternoon when your scrolls were still dry. Now rain is a lullaby, you don't quite know the words. To still you hum, along you read a treatise on the judicial reforms of a long-dead emperor, dry, with occasional flashes of brilliance, like when he banned bribing judges with goats, insisting instead on chickens for fairness. You make a nose revisit poultry, a justice concept. Rain pounds hard, the scent of damp plaster and sandalwood drifts through the room. Woobit brings you a bowl of warm porridge and says nothing about your robe being inside out. You eat slow, savor the texture, the heat. This is the luxury no one writes about. Not gold, not Jews, but sigs above. Not goes, not Jews, but sigs a warmth. a day where you don't have to perform your psalm, and yet by midday the stillness begins to it. You pace reread oldless, bits of ribbon, a carved comb, the smallest spoon you've ever seen, gifted bizarrely by a visiting merchant who insisted it was for special jams. You find a dried flower pressed flat between pages of a Poe. You don't remember who gave it to you, that should bother you, but it doesn't. Memory is patchwork, and you stitch together your life from scraps. You return to your jur. Draw a map of the palace gardens from Mem-Ad. Add in your favourite tree, the one you used to hide under during tantrums and sun. You mark the fountain where a pigeon once stole your ring. You write beside it, ring never recovered. Pigeon probably royal by now. Mid-afternoon brings a visor, not a fisser, not Skade, just Tesphane, old astronomer. Dripping water and good cheer in equal may he bows quelch. In pulls a scroll from under his rove. Thought you might be bore. He say, you are. Talks about the shifting constellations and how the rains will coax them into different dances. Soon you gnaw, ask quests mostly to hear his voice. Fill the corners of the rue, he tells you about an old belief that when the moon is bailed for too many nights in a row, it forgets its own fey. You ask if the same is true of queens. He says nussie, just smiles you. Both sit quietly for a while, then he departs, leaving a scroll of meteor patterns, and half a guar evening slips in. Like a shy gat you change into dry clothes. Comb your hair slow dro, not for any can, just for use. You light a candle clings to the windows. You write one sentence in your jurs. Sometimes it is enough to be unremarkable for a die. You add, I'd be twait, not to. Sleep creeps in gent, the kind of sleep that has read every page of your day and found no reason to stay awake. You do not dream of kingdoms or policy or dance. You dream of fog. And in it, a voice singing an old lullaby. It your mother a voice, or maybe just your memory version of it, either way. It wraps around your heart like wooler, and you res because even queens are allowed to rex, especially in the ray the next morning. The air smells like wet clay and eucalyptus. The rains have passed, at least for now, and everything the light touches seems cleaner, as if the storm rinsed away the palace of dust and discontent rise. Oh, not by choice, your back aches and your dreams were thick with strange symbols, cattle standing in libraries, your sister turning into a tree, your scribe insisting that goats could write letters if trained. You decide not to tell anyone about that last one, just in case it becomes a proverb by the time you dressed your day has already stacked itself. Like an overfilled bast you have a council meeting, 3 audience requests, a letter from the governor of Tigray which you suspect is mostly poetry, and, most dangerously of all, tar visit from the high priest of Oksu you saw. Drink water from a silver cup. Summon your calmest expression from wherever you misplaced it, and begin. The council meeting is, predictably, a tan everyone talking in loops, pretending they disagreeing when they really just showing off new metaphor. You raise one eyebrow at the appropriate time. You nod slowly when someone misquotes a law that you personally revised 4 years ago. You suggest a commised. For everyone relaxes. The issue is solved. Bay, sometimes the two are the same. Next, a widow comes to petition you. Her land was swallowed by a nobleman expansion. She says, his oxen, but he ate her fence and danced on her lentils. You suppress a smile, take no, promise to investle. You will, because even if your spine hums with fatigue, fairness is still the backbone of your rule, or at least your version of it. The second visitor is less endearing. A merchant who thinks flattery is currency and assumes queens love foreign spices more than just. You let him speak, then you say, perhaps your peppercorns would taste better without the salt of bribes. He pays you smide yourself, and he lever of date cake and exactly 4 minutes of peace. Then comes the high priest, resplendent in layers of indigo and thiole. He smells like old scrolls and rain-soaked wood. You bow your head politely. He bows lay there. They're tendy, they're always it. The clergy walk a fine line, listening rulers while hinting they answer to hire one. You know the gain, you know the stay. You counter with a proposal for shared community kishes. He frowns. You offer to discuss it with the theologians Oberlin. He frowns hard. You promise a response within the sacred cycle, which buys you exactly 8 days. He suspects he been outmaneuvered, but can't prove it yet. You watch him go. Then exhale through your nose. You whisper to yourself, one day I'd fake a pilgrimage and spend a month hiding in a monastery garden. You won, but the fantasy helps later. You retreat to your lie. It's one of your favorite room high windows. Stacks of scrolls and palm leaf manuscripts. Smells like ink and turmeric, and the pass. You perch on the low stool by the window and read a letter from a woman named Sejane, she a midwife, who writes Anu Not Mochu on birth trends, and her prof-mentioned twins are on the rise which some elders climb on moonlight. She disagrees politely. She also includes a recipe for day temple cakes that don't collapse in high humidity. You copy it into your private journal with a note. Try during next storm, evening draws near, like a curtain pulled slowly across the sky. You pause to look out the wind. The gardens are shimmering with leftover rain. You spot a gardener chasing a peacock away from a cabbage patch. The peacock wins as all peacock wins, as all are your final task for the day's unexpend. A child sent by her mother Darmina, noblewoman too nervous to speak in purr. The girl says, she hands you a note, and then, without prompting, curtsies so deeply, her forehead brushes. The floor you open the note, it is a simple request. Allow her daughter to train as a scribe, not a why. You look at the girl, she stares back. Not defiantly, just hope pa. You nod, say yes, her face shifts like a sunrise. You watch her skip out the door, taking half the weariness from your shoulders with her. Dinner is late, you eat alone tuna, cheese, lentils, a bowl of spicy stew that makes your nose run and your heart say. You light a candle with steady hands, write a letter to Segane, thanking her for the recipe and asking what she thinks of letting girls serve as temple scribes. You doubt the high priest would approve, which makes the idea even more appeal. Your final act before bed is sin. You stand by your map of the king. Trace the roads with your finger. Think of the people you've never met. The towns you've never seen, and wonder, just for a moment, if they ever think of you, not as a ruler. Then you blow out the candy, crawl into bed, and sleep without dreams, because today you lift them. You wake to the sound of birds arguing in the fig tree outside your win. They are loud and unapologetic, as if they too have caught matters to set. Your spine cracks as you stretch. The stone floor is cold under your bare feet. You pause a moment, let your eyes adjust to the honeyed light filtering through the woven shutters. Another day has arrived. Whether you asked for it or not, you dress slowly. Today is not one of your brie saun and cloak day. O mead, O serried. You slip into a simple cotton dress dyed deep blue, the kind worn by merchants' daughters or physicians' apprentices. Your hair is wrapped in a scarf, your hands bare of rings. You leave the palace by the garden gate, only 2 guards accompany you. They know better than to ask questions. You make your way through the northern district, where the cobblers and potters live. The road smells like wet clay and chard. Children play with hoops made from old cartwheels. Women gossip over baskets of maize. No one bows. You like it that way. You stop at the bakery. The old woman who runs it greets you with a grunt and a flour-dusted hud. She gives you a piece of warm honey bread and does not charge you. You look hung, she says, batting your stomach like you're a stray go. You eat it in 3 bites and feel more loved than after 10 political vid. A man is repairing a lute by the roadside. He waves you oh. You kneel beside him. Watch his fingers tighten the string. He asks if you Platon. You shake your head. He tells you it is never too late to learn, then plays a few notes, bright, soft, like sunbeams through water. You close your eyes for a second and let the music stitch a small hole in your chest. Further on you pass a woman weaving baskets from papayas. Her baby naps in a sling across her back. You crouch, ask her how she gets the coils so Eva. She laughs sepla, by making 1,000 ugly ones first. That sounds true for a lot of things. You keep waltz at the edge of the quarter. You find a boy sketching in the dust with a stee. He drawn a pie. A crooked one, but ambi. You ask it is that where the queen lives? Way, he nods. Proud. Adds a chicken on the roof for good May. You grin. Bold design. He shrugs, says, the queens get bored too. You know he not wrong. You slip him a cord too. He grins why, then wipes the drawing away before anyone else can see. The sky begins to turn the color of burnt hun. Time to return. You double back through the alleys, nodding at the beggar with the 3-legged dog, the washerwoman who sings in proverbs, the twin girls who always carry a cat between them like a shared seat. You arrive at the palace as dusk stretches its fingers across the hills, back inside. Everything is quiet, too quiet. You miss the clatter of the city. You miss the smell of stew boiling on someone else's fire. But here you are again. The dress comes off. The crown returns tomorrow. You host foreign envoys tomorrow. You would eat care, Tonight, you light a single, smile care. You unroll a scroll of tax reforms and ignore it. You reach for a blank sheet instead and begin sketching a power. Hit a lopside one tower tilts, a chicken sits proudly on the roof. You lightens proudly on the roof. You like Aidan Duria, because sometimes the wisest thing you can do is admit the truth before someone else does. Your dinner is late. A bowl of lentils and stewed carrots, delivered by a girl who says nothing and walks like she trying not to disturb the air. You thank her even though you know she not supposed to speak to you. You eat slowly. Let each bite remind you you're still here, still ground, still a woman, not just a tile before bed. You kneel at your prayer, may you whisper not to God, but to your answer. You tell them you're trying, you tell them you're tired, you tell them about the bakery, the loot, the boy with the chicken palace. You think they'd understand, you think they'd laugh. Then you crawl into bed. Your hair smells like bread and clay and fig leaves. You smile at the sea because today you were allowed to disappear for a few hours, and in doing so you found yourself again. No clattering of trays or soft whispers outside your chamber door, just silence, and the chirp of one insistent bird nesting, far too close to your shutter. You blink into the golden haze of dawn and wait, something must be wrong, but no one comes bursting in with scandal or requests or news of a political cousin. Your hair has coiled itself into impossible shapes over D. You're not surprised, you make tea, yes, by yourself, and stare into the steam like it might give you hands, and finally a knock. It is timid that alone tells you it and not urge you open the door to find one of the newer attendants, and Muriel, whose name you still don't remember, but whose eyebrows are always impeccable. She bows, hands. You a note, you thank her, genti, she nearly faints, you're not sure if it gratitude or fee, probably bow. The note is written in tidy script from your stew. Today, it says, is a day of remendi. It in the anniversary of your father, destin you sit, sip your tea again. Colder now, memory slides in like a draught under the door. Your father was not always kind, but he was never dull. He ruled like a lion lounging in the sun. He taught you how to read tax records and how to fish with your bare hand. He once bribed a priest to skip the boring parts of your coronet. He told you, on the night of your ascension, that queens were always one scandal away from collapse. He said it with pride, like it was a bad you did cry at his funeral. Not because you didn't care, but because everyone was water, so you stared at the fire instead, and counted the stars until your throat stopped burned. Today, though no one is watching you dress him, be no jewels, no send you wrap your scarf the way he used to tease you for crooked and too high on the floor. Then you walk through the pasty, through the guards to the small shrine built for him just beyond the eastern wall. It quiet he eastern wall, it quiet he duster, overgrown in place you knee, blight a canst murmur a prayer, even though you're not quite sure who it till you lay down. 3 hibiscus, pole red cadstran. Yellow for the parts of him that never quite made scent. You stay a while, not saying much, not needing to just breathe, letting the wind run fingers through the reeds, letting the silence be enough. Eventually, you ride in, return therein a note waiting for you on your writing desk from your steward again. Apparently one of the outer villages is hosting a festival today. They sent word weeks ago, asked you to attend, but you declined. Still you reread the note twice first, a real one not arranged. For your benefit, not fedi, for ben. With dancing and bread and games involving chickens, you do rather not understand. You stare at the past and then you smile the past, then you smile because suddenly. That sounds exactly like where you go rather be, so you dress again, this time in traveller garb, biche. You leave with minimal escort, just one guard, and your steward who looks both confused and delighted. The journey takes most of the morn, the road is bumpy, the sun unkind, but when you arrive, be worthy. The village is alive. Children run between stalls chasing each other with stolen fruit. There is music, real music, unpolished and joy. You try not to smile too much, but it is difficult. Someone recognizes you. Of course they do, but instead of kneeling she just hands you a clay cup of sorghum beer and says, "But you look thirsty." You finish it anyway. Therein dance. You do not participate, but your feet tap on their own. The chicken game begin. You still don't understand the rules, but you cheer when one escapes the circle and climbs onto a man and head like it's claiming the throne. You're given a garland of dried corn husks. It smells like sun and smoke and smiles. Even when it scratches your neck, your steward tries to take notes, but drops his parchment when someone pulls him into a ring of dance. You laugh, he does not, but his foot starts tapping too as the sun begins to lower. Someone hands you a small loaf of bread baked with honey and thyme. You eat it slowly, sitting under a tree that looks older than the concept of kings, and you remember your father again. Not the cramber, your father again, not the cran, not the war's just him, sitting by the fire, one sandal off humming a song the didnav con the guard pretends not to notice. But you see him smile, you return late covered in dust, your scarf askew but lighter some skew but lighter some brain. So off, you wake up sore the next day, not from bad, not from Dan, from lat from baffing, from walking too long, in sandals that were meant for ceremonial gestures, not dusty row. You stretch your back, and hear more creaks than you do, like your knees remind you they exist, but you'll smile, and that are rare. You shuffle to the window and let the breeze hit your face. It smells like sweet grass and the charcoal smoke of early breakfast somewhere. Someone is making porridge, you want some, but first, duto always duty, even after yesterday, day brief rebellion, you know whaty. Waiting, meeting and tied with silk. Therein already a stack on your writing desk, at least 5 scrolls high, each one probably more tedious than the lies, but before you can even groan your steward arrives carrying another stack. You blink, he raises an eyebrow and mutters, apparently no one took the holiday as seriously as you did. But only just. He sets the scrolls down, then hesitate, there's something else. He say you braced yourself, apparently one of the minor lords to the north has begun a very dramatic protest. He claims that a woman, me widow no less, was refused to vacate her late husband's lang. Worse, she gathering support. Women, most say your steward said, approach a few of the younger priests. You blink and then, slowly you smile, because this is not a prowl, this is a chaffer you ask for detail. She 40, widow twice, and reportedly once chased a tax collector off her land with a wooden spoon. A legend already. Her husband left her the land, and she has the papers to prove it. But the local lord believes it should revert to him. Naft Casti. Tassiki expected her to surrender quiet instead. She organised, and now you involved. You write a note, requesting Emnet be brought to the capital, not under arrest, as a guest. You want to hear her store. You want to hear her store. You want to hear the version that has not been edited by mail. Scribes your steward hesitates, this might look politic. By nightfall, the whole palace is buzz. Some call it fool, some call it beau. One of your cousins calls it par unladylike, which you wear like a mare's. Emnet arrives. 4 days later she steps off the cart, like she owns it. She wears a shawl patched in 3 places, and shoes mended with thread, the same colour as wine. She bows once, and only once. You like her immediately. You meet in a quiet chamber, far from courtier. There is tea, she drinks it without wane, and then she tells her store, not in the polite way, not with flattery or core. She tells it the way it has. She talks about harvests, about love that was loud and short, and the kind that was quiet and stayed. She talks about land, not just soil, but memory. She says the trees remember who planted them, and the ground knows who cried on it. She tells you about women who kept things running, while their husbands ran off, chasing taxes and tie. You listen, the whole time. You ask 2 quests, both small. She answers, like you all eat when the tea goes cold. You pour more, knowing you write a decree. It is not grand, it does make new, but it grants her full legal ownership of the likesed, and makes her a local matties, just like that. They mutter about precedents and a slippery slope. You smile and say, good, because if one slope leads to justice, maybe it's not so slippery after all. You ask Emmet to stay the night in the guest quarter. She agrees. The next morning she leaves her. No seri pray, no fuzz, just a nod, and a thank you that sounds more like a challenge than a compliment. You sit back at your day, and the steward brings another no. And the steward brings another no. A merchant from the south wants to meet. He claims to have a map no one else has seen. You watch and I stay. That sounds like a lie, but also like a story, so you agree. And before he even arrives, the rumour spreads that you're planning an expay. You're not yet, but the idea sits in your chest. Like a seed, you haven't left the capital in years. Not ready, just maybe, it I will mar, but maybe, just maybe. You summon your Tay, ask him if he can make a riding tunic that doesn't it. He nearly faints, apparently. Queen's done dried anyhow, but this queen she might anyhow. But this queen she might, when it arise, it full of mistakes. But there in one spot, deep in the southwest that marked, only marked with a symbol, a small sun you trace it, with your fin and wander no name no rose, just the possibility of something not yet ruined by memory or mice. Historians still argue whether queens in this period held real political power, or if they simply shaped the stories behind closed door. Why not both? You don't need stats, you don't need songs, but you take a map with the sun on it, and maybe one day someone will trace that same symbol and wonder who put it there. Maybe they'll imagine a queen with aching knees and too many scrolls, smiling at the idea of a road that does not exist yet. And maybe that's enough to plant wonder even in Dash you hadn't left the palace in months. Not truly you've stepped onto balcony, waved from shaded pavilions, strolled the inner gardens with your attendants, pretending not to listen to your muttered complaints about overcooked. But this morning feels differed, maybe to the way the birds are louder than UV, maybe it to the way your tunic actually fee, maybe it to the way the map from yesterday has left your mind. That small sun drawn with a flick of ink and a universe of implication. You eat half a sweet cake, declare your schedule postponed until further note, and saddle horses, well, don't saddle it, someone else does. You simply approve it, nodding as if you know the difference between 9 tight enough and mat that leave a bruise, and then you mount, not gracer, not with flay, but you do it. You are right, you, queen of everything the light touches, and several things it does not, trotting through the capital gates with only a guard, your steward and a scribe who already sweat the city watts. Some cheer, some stay, one small child points and says, "Boy, she looks like a chicken." The road stretches out before you. Dust rises in delicate clouds. The air smells like tamarind and sun-warmed stone. Your steward keeps trying to recite scares. You ignore him. The scribe asks if you want to record your thoughts for the archive. You ask if he brought snacks. In far, he did. You allow him to live another day. The capital fades behind you, swallowed by distance and heat out here. Things slow even your thought. There are no tapestry, no courtier, just earth and sky and the occasional startled goat. You ride until the sun leans westward, and then you pull just a small hill, golden and empty, overlooking a village whose name you've never learned. You dismount with more confidence this time. Your legs wobble like jelly, but you don't at forth. Pro, you sit on a rot. The view is unremarkable. Thatched roof smokes in the diz. Children chase a dog that and clearly winning. Someone is singing a lullaby. You half remend, and yet your breath slow. You're not smile, not quite, but your face forgets to fry. The scribe sits beside you. He opens his journal. Shall I describe the queening moment of peaceful contemplation? He eyes. You shake your head. Describe the dust. He bling there dust. Quake, yes, crew, you nod. It is very dusty today. I do like that to be remembered. He writes dust, significant. In careful script you approve. You talk less on the way back. Your guards follow at a respectful dis. No one says it aloud, but they're not used to this version of you. The one with her hair unbraid. The one who hums. The one who doesn't give orders. Just observe, those birds are migrating early. But Cloud looks like a turtle with regrets. I miss the pickled onions from the northern provinces. This queen isn't strategized, she exists, and somehow that feels more dangerous, more powerful. When you arrive at the palace gates, it is near wide. The walls look taller than you, the guards straighten, the steward finally exhale, but you don't go straight to your chamber. You take a detour to the RFI. The scribe follows, his hands smudged with ink and fig jay. The dusty one, the ones no one checks, unless a foreign envoy starts asking complicated quests. The archivist protests, "Boy scrolls are fragile." She say, "Although am I?" You reply, "Scroll." She fetches them, and you ride not like a queen, not like a scone, like someone who wants to remember names. Jump out at you. Queen Gudit, who burned cities and rewrote her own narrative with fire. Makeda, the legendary queen of Sheba, whose fame still confuses every man who tries to footnote her, and others, less known as the Zudita. Two women who ruled not with myth, but with disease, sometimes terrible ones, sometimes bready, all binds terrible with mytha. There in a sense, reading them, that you are not alone, not just in the room, but in the room. But in time their stories are not clean, not poe, but they are yours asleep on a scroll. You don't wake him instead, you leave him a no, dream of da. The next morning the palace runs like oars. Servants rush, courtiers, Wister the cook sets fire to something he swears is Sue. You receive a lead it bore it e. From Enna it a brie. Just one lively the trees are blooming again. You smile and decide something. Not to nobles, not to kings, to win across the king you ask your steward for names, midwives, cross-swim traders who ride across the Rift Valley, and stories packed in plagiars, he brings you a lay. You begin each letter is sin. I've here, not signed by your majesty, where, just your name, you send 20, the first day, then 50, the first day, then 50, virtually, you stop canning, some letters, return with notes, some with a joke. So good you read it to the guards, and they're actually warmer now. Historians still argue whether Ethiopian queens of the medieval period influenced rural life or remained detached in their ivory tower. You think they're asking the wrong quest because sometimes being a queen isn't about décolletés, it's about notice and meaning it. You sit by your window that night, the candle is lit, the tea is cooling. Your hand aches from write, but your heart feels away, and the city hums, and the sky fades, and a quiet wind carries the scent of something that might be lavender or might just be mema. Either way, you breathe it in. Your sandals are still damp from yesterday rain rye. You didn't bother drying them properly, just kicked them under your stool and fell asleep with your feet tucked into the folds of a wool blanket that smells faintly of juniper and old inn. The palace stirs slowly this morn, birdsong seeps through shuttered windows. The scent of baking millet drifts up from the kitchens, where someone has remembered that you prefer it sweet, not sazy. A minor mirror. You sit with your back against a cool wall, knees drawn up, brushing crumbs from your lap, as you chew thoughtfully and reread the last of the letters returned to you this one from the lowlands. From a woman named Tadala, who signs only with her title. Beekeeper of the Southern Mai, you like her already. Her writing is uneven but delida. She thanks you for the letter. She says her bees are fleury. She says she did know queens could write. You laugh out loud, then write back, we can write. And sometimes nap with our mouths open. We are complicated creatures. You seal it with a pressed flower from the court, not because it's poetic, but because it annoys your steward who insists the royal seal should be used for everything. Even thank you notes to Beekeef, the day unfolds like warm cloth. Soft scented, no sharp corners. You walk the halls with your sandals squee, no guards this time, no scribe scribbling behind you, just the sound of your breath and the lazy whisper of 1,000 distant thoughts in the west wing. The masons are finally finishing repairs from last season and rained. The walls had cracked, water had crept in like gossip under doorways. Now it in being seawed. You run your fingers across the wet plath. It just smooth, almost warn you. Ask the youngest mason if she thinks it will hold. She shrugs, forvit up, that she says, all be patched again. You knob their ear, a metaphor in there. But you don't feel like mining it just now. You return to your star, not the grand one. The small one with chipped windows and a crooked stew. You unroll a fresh sheet of pardon to crooked stew. You unroll a fresh sheet of pardon, and just sit no court busy, no repulse, just cypri isn't, not a lead, is not a lead, is not meant to be read, it in a many, a simple one from your first week as queen when you accidentally offended a visiting general by complimenting his leopard skin cloak. Unaware that in his region wearing leopard skin was a punishment for tax fraud, you still remember the silence that offering, and how Yugu tried to recover by offering him pickled mangoes. It had worked. But now it in funny write it down, line by line, the truth of it. The ridiculousness, the heat of your faith, the texture of the manet, the moment small and absurd, that no one else remembered but you did. You realize with a sort of startled tenderness that you want to preserve more of the, not the scans, not the days, the details, the heartbeat of your years, the joke, the smate, the quiet fitted. Historians still argue what constitutes a lace. They count coins, catalogue laws, compare trade, halls, the way the floor creaked in the corridor you paced before your first council. Maybe it is the song you hummed under your breath before meeting your betrothed. Maybe it is the woman who taught you how to grind coffee beans and spit properly when someone insults your king. You write her name down too, just in case the sun begins to dip. You step out onto the small tear. It carries the scent of ash and pine and something baking in the dish. Bread maybe, or roasted grey. The sky is lavender with a thread of orange near the horizon. You hear children somewhere beyond the walls, laughing, arguing. Livery, the stone beneath your bare feet is warm from the day. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you are not a queen, you are just a remembering. Softly, you whisper a line you once heard an old woman say at a fuse kai. Let them say, she stayed. And you did not perfy, not painless, but wholly, the world tried to shape you to forget you, to wear you down, and yet here you are still full of inconvenient pings. still craving cardamom, still smiling like a secret. When the moon comes athwart tonight, the candle will burn lower than you. You tuck your blanket under your knees and read one of the books Mark sent before he left. You let the pages fall closed when your eyes grow hair, and you'd sleep not as a queen, not as a chapter in someone else's book, but as your sotter, a woman who lady bo nasa bo. As the words soften, like light fading through linen curtains, a you walked long roads. Through parchment halls and sunlit hills, through the quiet ache of memory and the gentle power of nays, you met bees and masons, queens and scries, you tasted dust and laughter, and pickled mangoes laced with mistakes, and now you're home again, not the palace, not the throne, but your own stillness. The room you're in, the warmth around you, the hush that hums beneath your thoughts, let it hold you, let it rock you. Jen, there ain't nothing left to plan tonight, nothing urgent to fend tonight, nothing urgent to fend to no royal decisions waiting at your door. Just this one, this mode, this peace tomorrow. You rye maybe, maybe you ray, maybe you'll remember something silly and true, maybe you'll simply sit and sip your tea, and that will be a no. You're a no, you have always been chove. Let it hush, let it rest. You are safe, you are seen, you are still here.